Hi, it's Sean, or Polite Savage. Um, Today I'm actually going to make a small end table out of some sureply wood that I actually used to like spray paint on, just a piece of scrap. You can see I'm just brushing it off to see exactly what I am working with. And I'm going to use some old pine that I actually just ripped off of other larger pieces of wood for the sides. So let's get started. There's the wood laid out for you. So starting off, I'm just gonna rip the sides so I can make the project a rectangle shape. And now I'm going through and I am ripping the edges. I made them all squares. So I made them, size them all to square. So I suggest setting your table and cutting them all at once. And that way all of them will be the same size. If you come back later, you risk not setting it up so that way. Getting into it now, I have my tabletop cut. I'm using P60 sandpaper. So this table I actually want to look distressed and kind of rugged, like it's actually been through a lot. So in order to make this side look like the top, real distressed, I went in and I'm actually just roughing up the edges, removing the logo, adding some areas where it looks like it had been scuffed and product was removed, so that way it just went ahead and looked like the top. So consistency is actually going to be really important with this project because you don't want any of the wood to look newer or... So I'm switching to a P150 grit sandpaper and I'm going to give it a once over so everything is the same kind of smooth texture. If you notice, I'm wearing a glove on one hand. It's plywood, so it has real splintered edges, so it's smart to wear a glove. Now I'm going to start the sides of the table, and I'm marking my edges where I'm going to be doing the miter. So I'm going to do a 45-degree angle. I'm not going to cut any kind of joints or anything. I'm actually going to use brad nails. But I'm not a professional woodworker by any means. This is more of a hobby for me. So this is pretty important. I'm actually going to go in and number the sides. So I'm going to do a number 1 and then mark the number 1 with the corresponding edge of the table. So that way after I cut them, because they're not all going to be perfectly unified, there might be an irregularity. So I did a number 2. I'm going to go in and measure. And I'll write my number 2 on the board itself. So you can see I point, so I put an arrow to point. This goes to the inside of the table, and then I did the number so I know what size it is. So I use a really old miter box. This was my dad's, so it's sentimental, so I just use this. It's not broken, so why fix it? So I do that on both sides, and then I'm going to start installing the edges. So I was lucky, they fit just right. No overhang. I like Titebond glue. I use the waterproof version, so you can get like a giant gallon of it for 24 bucks. It's real cheap, and I always use the waterproof one just because I think it holds the best. So I'm gonna go in and just nestle the side of the table in here. I'm gonna use some bar clamps. So if you notice, I'm not using any shims or anything between the bar clamp and the wood because it's going to be a grungy, distressed looking table, so I'm not really concerned of marking up the wood. The plywood is extremely warped, so clamping was a challenge. Really important to wipe off the excess glue. It actually drives me, it's nuts when I go to stain something later and the stain doesn't penetrate because there was a glob of glue there. So I'm doing the edges too, making sure that I go in and just use my damp cloth and wipe off every section. Safety glasses, I'm going to use a brad nailer. And the reason why I'm emphasizing the safety glasses is because I actually had a brad nail ricochet off a knot in the wood once, and it flew up and actually cut my cheek, and it was real close to my eye, so ever since I just wear them every time. Notice the nail is actually going through to the other side. I don't have an adjustable brad nailer because I'm on a budget, but I don't mind that because it's a real distressed looking table. I'm actually going to go in and hammer them down, so you'll actually be able to see the hammered down ends of the brad nail. So I'm going to take off my clamps, being real careful that I don't poke myself with one of those nails. Now I'll go ahead and grab my hammer and just hammer down those edges. I tried to hammer them kind of in the same direction, but you can see that's the side. I'm actually going to take a 1 1/4" nail. Now, it's important that I use the serrated nails, so these actually, the shaft of the nail has grooves in it, because when you use those kind of nails, they don't go anywhere, because this table has such a thin top that I want to really make sure that the nail is supported. And also, those brad nails are not going to hold the top of this table for an extended period of time, especially with changes in humidity, like if the house is going to get warmer, cooler, and so on. So I'm just putting this in as an insurance policy, but they actually look really cool. So they fit the aesthetic I want for the table. So double function here. So I'm gonna mark the next sections. I use a fat pencil. I don't know why. I just like it. I don't care. I'm the kind of person that I just go ahead and go in. Like if I was using like oak or something real precious, I would, be a little more careful with my marks. But one important thing is I don't mark all of these at the same time. I put 2 on and then I mark the next 2, so that way it's a perfect fit. So I'm going to do the same process with this one. I'm going to glue my edges. Really important to go in and put glue on that 45-degree angle. I'm just making sure I put the right side up. So I actually wanted to make sure the side with the most character was facing up. I want to make sure that you can see all of the knots and imperfections in the wood. Back in with my clamps. So put on your safety glasses, and we're going to go in and tack down this particular piece. So I'm tacking it down so I don't have to, two reasons. I want it to have some secure edges, and also I don't want to wait, you know, the 8 hours for the glue to set. And this particular section really would need 24 hours to set. This is really important, and so I'm going to use this clamp as a lever. And what it will do is I'm going to put my knee on the opposite corner and pull the clamp towards me. And what it's going to do is pull the edge, the far edge, together. If you can see, once I start pulling, the glue is going to seep out. You can see that, and then I'm going to nail it in place. So what that'll do is it'll make sure that your joint is tight. It's not an orthodox technique, but it works. Face. Don't shoot towards your hand like that. So I do that on all 4 sides. Now I'm going to create a middle piece that's actually going to go through. If you notice, this piece is real, you know, messed up. It's got stain all over it, but I sand that off later. So I'm going to make this particular piece that's going to go across, because this wood is so thin and warped. It needs a support in the middle. So if you see, I marked my edges so that it's a perfect fit. I'm going to use my miter box from, I don't even know, I think this miter box is from the 90s, but I love it. It jumps. Like when you start it, the torque is so strong it like jumps. So I had to put it on that piece of wood so it stops jumping. So this is my tip for this. I learned this the hard way. When you're making a joint like this, putting in like a support, you want to make sure that it has to be like hammered lightly in place. You don't want it to just drop in perfectly. You want it to have a kind of a tight, snug fit. So you see I hammer it down until the glue starts seeping out. And then of course, tack it in place with some of the brad nails. So again, I'm going to clean off my glue. So you can see the underside. Some of those X's are still showing. I really like that. It has a lot of character. So you can see there's my edges. Now if you... So I'm using an actual real cheap, junky belt sander because this is actually going to sand over some metal. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want any raised metal. Like all the nail tops, I want them to be even with the wood. I don't want any edges or ridges that are with the metal because those will catch clothing or different things. Now what I'm going to do, I'm actually going in and just figuring out what my composition is. So I want it to be distressed in a way that's kind of consistent. Like I don't want it to be heavy in black in one area or heavy in the gray in one area. I want it to be kind of consistent, because you got to think of it like a painting, like a composition. You don't want it to be too heavy on one thing in a certain area. So I'm doing the same on the underside. I'm making sure there's absolutely no metal ridges from the nails that I tacked over, because if someone goes to pick this up and puts their fingers underneath the bottom of the table, you don't want them to get stuck by or cut by a edge of a nail. So use a cheap sander that you don't care about. This sander I got on Amazon for like $25. So this particular section I'm the most proud of, because I'm gonna go ahead and mix a custom stain, and I'm gonna use a Minwax stain and a oil-based polyurethane. So both of them are oil-based. So you never want to mix a water base and an oil base, because it's not going to work. They're not going to mix together. So I open those two up, and I'm actually going to use my brush to put just a little bit of the pigment in. If you notice, I didn't stir the stain because I don't want the real thick chunky part that's on the bottom. I really just want the really liquidy top part of the stain. So when I picked it up, I just swirled it around a little bit, and I'm just going in and picking exactly how much I want to start with. Once you pick exactly how much you want, you can just pour in how much polyurethane and test it as you go. You can put some in, mix it up, and test it to see where you're at, to see if it's the consistency you want. The goal I want is, when I put this on the wood, I don't want it to look like I stained the wood. I just want this to make the wood look old, like it's a darker, older piece of wood. So I'm going to go in and start painting, applying my polyurethane. So I'm going to actually speed this up, so you'll see some of my beginning brush strokes. And the reason why I wanted to show this is because if you notice, it goes on very streaky. So when you're painting it, you want to keep moving. So keep on moving throughout. Don't let it just sit, because if you let it sit, it's going to be darker in some spots. And you don't want that, or else it's going to look like you painted something on it. And for me, I want this to look like it's just dark wood. I'm going to go through and do that. It's also going to kind of bring out some of the character in the wood. So if you notice the distressed sections that I distressed are brighter now, you can tell that there's sections of it that are a little more beat up than others. So if you flip it around, so now I'm really brushing it over and over again, because when you're using like a thinned out stain like this, if you don't brush it over and over again, you're gonna get darker spots. It's not. So now I'm gonna use the same stain mixture on the top. So if you notice, I say if you notice a lot, but notice that the top looks really, it looks like I treated it. It looks like I did stuff to it. So when you put this mixture on, it's just gonna go ahead and make it look a lot more organic, like you weren't sanding it and curating the composition. And it's kind of making it grungy. And if you look at the yellow, it really brings out that yellow kind of streaky section. So same process, you want to make sure you go over every section. I'm going to remove. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to add one layer of my mixture, and then I go in and do 3 coats of the oil-based polyurethane clear. After the second coat, I sanded it slightly with really make sure that it's smooth. Here it is finished. Here's the tabletop. If you notice, it's wall art. This could be used as a piece of wall art as well as a tabletop. So you can see the nails, how nice the nails look. This might not be your thing, but some people really like this kind of grungy, distressed look. So if you watch right here, I'm drilling the holes for the legs. Look at the wood. The wood looks like it's just that color. It doesn't look like I stained it at all. So pre-drilling those holes. You don't necessarily have to put legs on it. You could just hang it on the wall as a piece of wall art, but I thought this would make a really nice table, so I decided to order some metal legs on Amazon. I used these black, they're called hairpin legs, and I use these because they don't take a lot off of the piece, like they don't make you notice them, and also you can take them off pretty easy. Like if you want to hang this on the wall as wall art, you can just take off the legs. I don't recommend you using a drill to torque the nails in, the screws in, if you're not confident that you won't strip the top. Like, I'm being very careful when I'm driving them in. If you're worried about stripping the nail top, the section of the screw, just drive them in with a handheld screwdriver. And here it is, finished product. You can see the polyurethane really gives it a nice finished look. The seams, it looks seamless. It looks like a solid piece of wood, almost. It almost looks like live edge, but it's not. You can see the nails looking real cool. It's a really, really neat piece. I could see this in an apartment, in a high-rise, or I could just see this in like a barnyard table. Here's a photograph of it on some hardwood. You can see the yellow. See how the yellow kind of stands out? There it is, zoomed out. The edges look real neat. So some last minute thoughts. Make sure when you're actually putting the plywood onto the sides that there's no gaps. It's completely sealed along the edge. You don't want it to look like you put a piece of plywood over the sides. You want it to be completely sealed. But yeah, thanks for watching. I still have this table if you want to buy it. I'm going to put my email in the notes, and I can ship this anywhere in the US. Also, the company I have is called Ruthetta Handmade, and I have an Etsy shop. So if you want to look at my stuff, I make birdhouses, little tables like this, and all sorts of different projects. If you want me to make you something like this, just email me, and I'll go ahead and we can talk about possibly making a table like this. But subscribe to my channel. I'm going to make more videos like this. I have a bunch of different little projects. I'm going to make a tray and all kinds of things. So take care and stay safe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.